Okay, it's 3 p.m. So let's start our info session in English for today. First of all, welcome everyone to the grant info session in English, and please find a seat here. I'm Lauri Alaviitala. I work in the communications team here at Kone Foundation. And before we start, I'll just tell a little bit about our program. So during the first hour, we will hear presentations by Ulla, Kalle, and Laura. And after that, we will take a short break. And then we have the second hour just for audience questions and answering them. So we will have plenty of time for discussions. On YouTube, our Grand Secretary Reetta Sassi will be answering questions already during the presentations. But we will also take questions from YouTube here during our questions and answers session, and we will also have all the YouTube questions here on the big screen, so you can see them here as well. Just a reminder that the Q&A session and the chat on YouTube will also be part of the recording, so if you have any questions with personal or sensitive issues, you can send us an email and we will answer by email. And the event will end at 5 p.m. the latest. Let's see how many questions we have, and maybe we have some time at the end to just have a chat and talk about your questions in person. But if you have any questions that haven't been answered when we end, you can also send us an email, and there will be more information on how to contact us in Laura's presentation. And also our website has all the information, so you can find a lot of answers there. So yeah, let's start with the presentations. First, we have our CEO, Ulla Tuomarla. So please, Ulla.
Thank you, Lauri, and welcome to Lauttasaari Manor, all of you who are here today on this hot day, and also over 50 people are attending this info session online, so welcome also the people who are not in Lauttasaari today. I think it's a very good idea to listen to our info session before you start drafting the application. So I'm going to speak, for my part, I'm going to speak on very general principles about grant making in this foundation. I'm going to talk about Kone Foundation's strategy, and you might wonder why that should be something that you should be aware of. You are not working for the foundation, and even if you get the grant, you are not an employee of the foundation. But still, I think it's very useful for you to know the basics of our strategy, because somehow you should make sure that there is a marriage between your application, your project, and the foundation strategy. Kone Foundation is an ambitious foundation. So our mission is not less than making the world a better place. And we believe that we can have a great impact on the improvement of people's lives by funding research and art. And this is the reason of existence of this foundation. So we try to create the conditions for free and multi-voiced art and research. So basically this means that you can apply for almost anything, but there are still some restrictions. These are the values of our current strategy. So there's academic and artistic freedom. So there's really a lot of freedom. There's also eco-social awareness, which is a large concept of well-being. So you pay attention to the nature, but you also recognize the social needs, for instance, and you try to marry the two. We also pay attention to diversity in our grant making. We encourage the applicants to be bold, so you can make very brave suggestions to the foundation. We also would like to have some several years of funding, so short projects are not something we particularly favor. So we encourage you to make a little bit longer plans of work so that there is perseverance in some sense. We also support forms of community making, so not least within the foundation, of course, amongst the employees, but we also favor dialogue with our grantees, so we encourage a sense of community, and the well you might have seen in the garden of the manor house is the symbol of this community. Something about the volume of our grant making might be interesting for you to know. In the Finnish scale, Kone Foundation is not a minor player among the foundations. So these numbers tell you that Kone Foundation easily compares to some smaller universities, for instance. So last year, the grants paid equaled 750 years of work. So that's a pretty large amount of people working on something. And that number, if you turn that into months, that's 9,000 months of work. So it's a large community, and we are, of course, very proud of that. So one of the first things you should know when you are planning to apply from Kone Foundation is, of course, to know which are the fields and disciplines that we support. It's one of the really most important things. So we support research in humanities, we support research in social sciences, and we also support research on art, which is a pretty new discipline in Finland. Taiteellinen tutkimus in Finnish, if you are hesitating on the term.
Artistic research.
Artistic research, sorry. The translation is not correct then. Environmental sciences, ympäristön tutkimus, ympäristötiede in Finnish, also a little bit tricky to translate perhaps. And artistic work in all fields of art, and this is of course professional artistic work. We also particularly favor multidisciplinary work in the above-mentioned fields of research and art, and this means that there are quite often combinations in projects of research work and art, and this is something that has become almost a trend in the recent years, and we are also very happy about that. If you are living abroad and you are planning to apply from Kone Foundation, you should know that there needs to be some connection with Finland. This is in the statutes of the foundation, so it's not something that we are going to change next year or in 2 years' time. So some connection is needed, but we are really open-minded about the nature of this connection. So it can be you as a Finn working somewhere else, or you can be a foreigner working in Finland, or you can have team members in your team who work in Finland or who are Finnish or whatever. So if we look at last year's results in numbers, the total sum of grants awarded in the general call last year was 38 million, roughly. And it might be useful for you to know that the major part, the biggest part of it, went and will go to research projects. So academic research is what we mainly fund. But since the art projects are generally smaller, and this is not something that we especially encourage you to do, so we are not saying that if you're doing art you should have less money or something like that, so that's not my point here, but the art projects are in nature generally smaller, so there's less funding in money last year for art projects. What is a really minor share here is what we call other cultural work, muu kulttuurityö. So you should be aware of the fact that the foundation mainly funds artistic work, professional artistic working, and then research work. These are the main areas. And like I said, there's a trend of combining the two. So 16.4% last year was awarded to projects that combine research and arts. This is a tough competition, I'm sorry to say. We get every year really excellent applications that don't get funded. We are going to repeat this several times during this info session. So it's a sad fact that the award rate of the funding was this small. And if you once again compare academic research and art, the competition is harder on the art side. So the award rate within art is about 4%, which is of course a very, very small number. But still, people do get funded. So this is not a desperate project after all. So if you look at the numbers of projects, so I'm not looking at the euros right now. Last year, in the general call, the total was 335 projects that got funding. And when I say project, I mean sometimes work groups, but it can also mean individual people doing their PhD or something. So project is now covering all these different entities of applicants. So 154 items of research projects, 139 items of art projects, and like I said, other cultural work is a very small share in the total number. It was only five pieces of that kind, and then research and art combinations totaled 37 items of projects. Let's move on to more concrete things. So I welcome my colleague Kalle to speak next about Kone Foundation's funding.
Okay, thank you, and welcome on my behalf too. So I'd like to correct the erroneous form in the slide. I wonder how it could be. Well, we do fund research on art, obviously, but within humanities, and no, I can't just artistic research. Well, and I'm going to say some words about it, although you already know what it is. So, so let's move to some more practical issues of our funding this year. So we have, as Ulla said, we are going to fund research and art this year, like we did last year, and we are going to fund them more than last year. So we will be increasing our funding budget. And so, anyway, as Ulla said, most of our funding goes to research. Well, it's about 2/3 to 3/4 of our whole budget, and then 1/4, between 1/4 and 1/3 is for art. This Vague expression is because we have projects where you have artists and academics working together, so we are not counting them. Well, we could count the percentages, of course, but we haven't put them here. So we value then collaboration between artists and researchers, but we do fund research per se, or and ars gratia artis, and without any academic connotations or limitations or connections. And then the foundation's strategy has a role in funding decisions, and this is because we have sort of moved away from a generalist foundations, a Finnish type, Nordic type foundations approach where you fund excellence in art, excellence in research. So we fund excellence, yes, absolutely, but then among all the excellent applications, our evaluators can choose between choose those which, according to them, have the best connections to the strategy of the foundation. And then, of course, other foundations work in different ways, and that is great. So the academic disciplines we fund are humanities and social sciences. And then the small print, as always, we do not fund business studies and well, of course, then in the beginning, I should have already said that the concepts we use, we use Finnish in our daily work. So then we translate the concepts, and you can have many English translations for the concepts we have. Like for example, I don't know if business studies is the most correct form of business-oriented economics or something like that. And then we don't fund law, psychology, theology per se, so without any connections with other humanities, other social sciences. And then humanities are at about 40% of our research funding budget, social sciences about 30%, and environmental sciences about 20%. Environmental sciences is something that the Academy of Finland, if you are familiar with that, they don't have that category. So it can be ecology, or it can be societal environmental research. But anyway, environment here is not in the broadest possible sense, but it mostly refers to natural environment, not, for example, the urban environment. Then you can, if you do research on the urban environment, then you can have a social science or humanities approach. Then we fund popularization in these disciplines, and you can combine research and popularization in the same project, but you don't have to, so you can have a project exclusively focused on research popularization or outreach. Yes. So art, we don't have the similar limitations we have. We can fund all fields of art, but there we sort of emphasize ars gratia artis, so not applied art, where you have the aim where you have an aim that is something else than artistic outputs. We emphasize artistic work in our funding, and you don't have to motivate your artistic work by saying that it has a positive effect on well-being, human well-being, or the Finnish GNP or GDP or Finland's exports. Why there was a time when it was called GNP. And then, so this September funding call is where the majority of our funding is awarded. So about, say, 90% of our annual funding budget is awarded in this call in September. And there you can have any topic, so you don't have to choose a topic that somehow you think that the Kone Foundation would especially like. You can have a topic that you like then, and then hope that the foundation likes your research or artistic work. Then, in addition, now we don't have a thematic call this year, but we have a continuous call on forests, and there's a separate slide for that. So I'll come back to it a bit later. Yes, then we have different forms of funding. We have grants for groups and for individuals. The groups, Laura will tell you more about what kind of entities can apply for funding. The maximum length of project is 4 years, and then shorter grants are of course possible too. And maybe it's good to mention here that if you have funding from Kone Foundation for 4 years, then you can't have another funding immediately after that. So you have to wait for the next year in order to apply again. So we have had, but this is like if you have funding for the same project or for the same purpose as you had it before. So you can have a different project funding, different kind of work, funding for different kind of work immediately afterwards. And then what is useful to remember with Kone Foundation, in Finland you often have funders who only give you personal grants and don't cover the expenses that you have from your research or artistic work. But Kone Foundation is not like that, so do apply for funding for other expenses too. We don't have sort of a list of things that you can't apply funding for. So we are able to cover your other expenses. This is something you should remember, and especially our doctoral researchers who are working on their doctoral theses. You shouldn't think that you will get some other funding for your conference trips or for your DNA analysis or for your other literation or something like that, but you should apply for them also from Kone Foundation at the same time, because then it might be difficult in the current economic situation of the universities to have other funding from there for those purposes, unfortunately. And then which this is something that is a particularity of the a specific characteristic of the Finnish funding system. We are allowed as a foundation to pay personal grants to people who do artistic work or academic work, and the personal grants in the Finnish system are not salaries. So as Ulla said, you won't become employees of the foundation, but the foundation will pay the grants directly to your bank account. And the taxation of the personal grants is slightly different from salaries. So you don't pay the regular taxes for them. You pay the pension payment, but not the regular taxes. Yes, then for those members of projects who are in sort of subordinate roles, like research assistants or coordinators, then we we pay salary funding. So you can apply for salary funding for those people and include all the expenses, all the salary expenses that you need in the Finnish or wherever you are working. And I didn't say much about the, well, I'll say something about the sort of how working across borders a bit, yes, in a moment. But now, some choices you have to make in your application. So you must choose an evaluator profile, at least one, but you can choose 3. The first one you choose is the most important. And if you apply for funding for a doctoral thesis, even if it's in artistic research, you should choose an academic discipline. So the artistic research fields are listed among the academic disciplines. But you can, if you have a project that combines research and art, then you can then, of course, choose evaluator profiles from both sides of the spectrum. Then you have to choose the type of project, and there we have research, art, and research and art. And if you, for example, if you are an artist working on let's say gender or environmental crisis, you often will be using, maybe you will be using academic research, but still you can call it art. You don't have to call it research and art. If we call it research and art when you are really working, doing both in your project. And yes, professionality, I forgot to mention about that, so but are you going to talk about that too? Maybe we can both talk about it a bit. So, in order to apply for funding for artistic work, you have to have some kind of professional merits, so at least artistic training or artistic merits. So you can't like start, if you start today, if you start doing art today and you don't have any merits, you don't have any artistic training yet, you can't apply for Kone Foundation fund grants for artistic work. But we don't require for that you have a degree from an art school, for example, in order to apply for artistic work. But then if you apply for a research grant, then you should have people who have degrees, from MA degrees at least. We fund both MAs, doctoral work, doctoral thesis work, postdoctoral work, and then senior researchers. And then the purpose of funding is another thing you have to choose. We have put doctoral thesis as a separate category because we have so many applications for doctoral thesis work. But then if you are a working group, then you should choose academic research and or artistic work, or unless you are doing popularization of research or just an event, an exhibition, or an artistic production. So, for example, if you are an artist, let's say visual artist, and you are working, first you will be doing some artistic work and then you will exhibit, then you should apply from the first category, because it's not just the exhibition that you need funding for, but it's also the artistic work that you have to do in order to prepare the exhibition. Then we have now, we will be increasing our grant levels because we have the inflation and everything, and the war and the environmental crisis and everything, and we think that we try to help a bit. So sorry for the bad joke. But anyway, the grant levels will be the first level, which is, let's say, junior artist or doctoral thesis researcher will be 2,700 euros per month, and then the second level postdoctoral researcher or artist with a 10-year experience, 3.2 kilo euros, and then 3.8 thousand euros is the third degree, which is the Finnish docent level, which can be compared with the German Habilitation, or there are some other degrees in other countries or some other sort of, but there you need experience after your research experience after your postdoctoral or after your doctoral work. So, but you can ask us more if you are if your merits are from other countries, and then you would like to know if you qualify for the third level of personal grant. Then some points to remember: include all the expenses in your budget. No separate applications for different expenses. And then for Kone Foundation, recommendations are important in the doctoral, especially in the doctoral phase, but also in the postdoctoral phase. And as far as recommendations are concerned, quality counts more than quantity, and you don't you should ask for a recommendation from someone who knows and appreciates your work. There we don't have sort of instructions for those people, for the people who write recommendations, but the person should sort of emphasize why this work by you is important and why you are qualified or very good, would be a very good choice for doing it. And then we encourage people to apply for multi-year funding. We know that projects change a lot during their tenure. You don't really know what you are going to do in the fourth year, and this is something that a professional research or art funder should know. So that's why we can be then very flexible during the project. And then of course one should emphasize that your language choices, you don't have an effect on the evaluation. So and you can have different parts of the application in different languages. We read Finnish, Swedish and English, but then the application form is only in Finnish and English. If you have, for example, doctoral degree certificates in other languages, it's fine. You don't have to sort of create translations. But you should sort of, if you write your research plan in another language, then you should sort of expect the evaluator to be able to read that. So, and then there are many myths circling around on what Kone Foundation funds, and please ask us, and then we can bust the myths and tell you that it's not true that we do fund other things than this. And I was going to say something about something, but I forgot. Yes, the autumn funding call will be now in September. It will close at 4 p.m. Finnish time, remember. So the Finnish time is the Eastern European summertime. Please don't submit your application in the last hour. So this is something that we the submitting it during the last minutes leads to many tragedies every year, because then you are sort of making it arbitrary if your application can be submitted or not, because many people are doing it at the same time. So there we have 3 topics: academic disciplines as mentioned above, and all fields of art are possible. No thematic call this year, unfortunately. The democracy program will continue, and there are huge problems in democracy in Finland too, but we'll come back to them soon. But now we go to the forest. So we have a new initiative, Metsän puolella. So it would be like on forest's side, not meaning Nottingham Forest, the famous Premier League club, but in Finnish it has also the meaning that inside the forest. So we like to use forest metaphors at the foundation. There we fund interdisciplinary projects that make people understand the various meanings of forests and bring new perspectives and approaches to forest discourse. And there you can see that Finnish, sort of the words Finns and Finnish are mentioned, but this is not, of course, limited to Finland or Finnish forests, but this is somehow this springs from the necessity and the importance of forests in the Finnish culture and economy too. So anyway, you don't have to do research on Finnish forests, or you can do research on other forests, but you should anyway be involved with the forest. The projects can be they don't have to be research projects, they can be artistic projects, they can combine journalism and activism in various combinations, or you can have a unidisciplinary approach too. Well, this is a bit contradictory. I said funding for interdisciplinary projects, and then I say you can delve deeply into a single discipline. Well, this sounds like Kone Foundation. We are contradictory at times. So, but anyway, all the funded projects should have a connection to academic research or art. And then there's going to be a Metsän puolella on the forest side community, which will be happening in our former premises in the southern Helsinki, not in the forest or in a forest, but not immediately at least. So I think I'll now give Laura the floor. Thank you.
Hello everyone to here and also on the other side of the camera. My name is Laura-Liis and I will tell you a little bit about the evaluation process, and also in the end I will show you the actual application form, and then you have the opportunity to make some questions about the form. First, some general points on the evaluation process. So the processing of Kone Foundation applications are based on peer review, and annually we have approximately 50 evaluators, 30 in research and 20 in arts. And the selections are based on suggestions by the Kone Foundation Board of Trustees and the foundation staff, and also the evaluators from previous years can give their suggestions on the evaluators. And when we consider the evaluators, we emphasize expertise knowledge and diversity. We pay attention to things like age, gender, and geographical locations. And now we have this online form on our website, so anyone can go and propose an evaluator. It can be yourself as well. The evaluators change annually, so we want to do it so we can ensure the diversity and also so that the power will not be kept in one person's hands every year. It's good to remember that the staff of Kone Foundation doesn't participate in the evaluation. We give instructions to the evaluators and we are to support them, and we make sure, for example, that each and every application is sent to an evaluator. So the evaluators, they work alone. They do the evaluation in our online system, and typically there is one evaluator per application. And this is because we don't want them to do any compromises. We want them to make decisions that they feel free they can do. So they don't need to compromise. If there would be more than one, usually it's a compromise. The final decisions are made by the Kone Foundation Board of Trustees, and it's based on the proposals by the evaluators. And the decisions will be published always in early December. We will tell the exact date later on. And we do not publish the names of the evaluators. We want to ensure that they can work in peace. And also, if there is any criticism towards the grant decisions, we want that they are directed towards the foundation, not the evaluators personally. And Kalle already mentioned about the decisions you need to do. So in the application form, you need to choose which field, we say there as evaluator profiles, you want the evaluator assessing your application to represent. And usually it's the first choice of a field that the evaluator will represent. And especially if you have multidisciplinary application, you can make maximum of 3 choices, but it's good to remember that it's usually the first choice, that it's the most important one. And in the actual application form, you can comment if you really think it's really important that more than one evaluator reads your application. And all the profiles are already listed on our website, so you can go and read them from there. So I'm not gonna read them through here. I would like to say that especially in the big fields where we receive a lot of application, for example, performing arts, we have more than one evaluator. It means that we can have, for example, 5 evaluators, and then we distribute the application among them, keeping in mind that one application is read by one evaluator. Then, what the evaluator pays attention to. We meet every single one of the evaluators and we give them guidelines. First thing is the general criteria. Like Ulla said, it needs to involve the fields that Kone Foundation supports. There needs to be a connection to Finland, and the work needs to be professional art or academic research. And also we ask the evaluators to pay attention to our strategy and the values that Ulla also spoke about. And it's important that all of you read through these values and you check if your project connects with those values. It's not meant that you need to include every single Kone Foundation value in your application. If it's forced, we will always see it. But just kind of read these values against your application and see how they correspond. And of course, all the evaluators and all the applicants, they interpret these from their own perspective, so that's also it's also good to keep in mind. About the attachments, we don't have any really strict requirements. The only thing is that the work or research plan should not be longer than 4 pages for individuals, and for work groups 8 pages. It's just important to make sure that you include all the required attachments in your applications, because with them the evaluator evaluates how your project is, if it's feasibility or not. It's also good to keep in mind that the evaluator, although they are specialists in their fields, they don't necessarily know you or the project you are applying the funding for. Also, they don't see any of your previous applications that you might have sent to Kone Foundations or your reports. So write the plan so that they don't know anything about you or your project. And make it very clear. Clarity is usually something that the evaluators appreciate a lot. Also, keep in mind to write a very clear summary. Some evaluators might have around 200 applications to read, and many times it's the summary that they read first, and they might do some selection already based on that. Also, it's very important that your plan and budget, they correspond. So sometimes there are plans, very big plans, but then you apply very little of funding, or vice versa. You have a huge project and it just doesn't match the plan and the amount of money that you are applying. Also, sometimes in the applications, applicants tell a lot what they have done previously, but don't tell much about what they are applying the funding now for. So it's really good to focus on the project that you are now applying the funding for. Also, in a larger project, it's good to make the budget very clear if you're applying funding somewhere else or have received funding elsewhere. Just write it very clearly, the amount that you are applying from Kone Foundation. And like Ulla and Kalle said, we received lots of good application. Usually it's around 6,000 applications many year, and not all of them can get funding. So many interesting projects are left without funding, even though they would match the criteria. It's also good to keep in mind that the evaluators, they change annually. So if you didn't receive funding this year, maybe next year you will. And last year we funded over 300 projects, 335 if I remember correctly from Ulla's presentations. So there is hope. And unfortunately we do not give any feedback because of the huge amount of application, and also because the evaluation, it's ultimately very subject. And here, if you need help with your grant applications, we recommend always read first our instructions on our website. We also offer these personal advice sessions in August and early September. I think, unfortunately, most of them are already fully booked. I think there might be a few times left on the 6th of September. If not, you can always contact us by email, and during the grant call we also have the online chat open, and you can also call us. And now the most interesting part, I will show you the application. So first, of course, you need to log in. Probably if you have already applied last year or previous year, you can use the same logins, but you will know how to do it, so I will not go there now. So you will just create a new application. You will choose General Grant Call. Oh, now it locked me out, sorry. So we need to log in. Here you would register as a grant applicant if you haven't applied before. So it's a security check. Okay, let's try again. Create a new application. You choose the General Grant Call. And here we have the type of applicant. So you can apply as an individual applicant, working group, or an organization. If you apply as a working group or organization, you need to choose a project leader that will actually be the responsible person making the application. So let's choose organization this time and start. Here on the left, you can see all the sections of the application form, and you can move freely by clicking them. You will see everything, but let's start from the beginning. First, you put the applicant details and the information of the leader. So this is in case of the working group or organization. We also ask you to add the details of participants to whom you do not apply the personal grant for. And here you can always save and continue, but I will just show like this. Here you will choose the type of project, if it's research and art, or other cultural work. And here you can add some keywords if you want to. They are not mandatory in any way. In the description section, you would add the working title and the summary. And these two will be published if the grant is awarded to you. And here in funding, you would choose the primary purpose of the funding. These are the options that Kalle already mentioned. And here you will choose if you are applying for multi-year grant or for a year at most. And depending what you choose, it will change. It will give you more years here in below. And here you would add all the people you apply the personal monthly grant for. And it's also possible to apply the grant for an unnamed person, so you would just click here. You will add the details, and here you would choose the duration of the work in months. So how many months would this person work for first year, then you choose it for second year, and so on. Then you choose the working percentage, so it can be 25, 50, 70 or 100%. And it can be different in different years, so it doesn't have to be the same all the time. And then you choose the grant amount. If you choose one of these two, the higher ones, you need to explain here why you are applying for the higher amount. If in addition to the personal monthly grants you apply other expenses, you would list them here. In addition, you would need to add a more detailed budget as an attachment. Here, other funding, you would list other grants or funding you have received in previous years. If you have other applications pending for Kone Foundations, if you have applied or received funding previously from Kone Foundation. And here in the section Evaluators, you will make the selection of the evaluator profiles. Here listed all the research disciplines and artistic evaluator profiles. And like we said, you can make maximum of 3 choices. And here below you can comment if it's really important that more than one evaluator reads your applications, or if you have any other comments regarding the selections, let's say. Attachment and links, it's quite clear. You add the attachment. It's also possible to add website links. Here. It's good to remember to attach. Sometimes you forget it. Then references. Here you have 2 possibilities to attach references. If you already have one, you can add it here as an attachment, as a PDF. Or here you can add the details of the referee, and we will send the reference request directly to their email, and they will receive a request to submit a referee using our online form. Then we will just ask if you're related to our members of the board or directors. It's quite straightforward. Then you can also give us feedback. This is something that it doesn't affect on the evaluation of your application, and the evaluators don't see this. So it's really up to you if you want to fill this or not. Then when everything's ready, you just go here and submit. And after submitting the application, if you see something that you would like to change, you can cancel the application. It doesn't delete any information you have already written there, but you can modify and then you can just send it again. Of course, this needs to happen during when the grant call is open. Now I think we have few minutes left. If you have any questions regarding the application form, the other types of questions you can ask later after the break. Here are a few ones.
Hi, thanks. I have 2 questions about the application. So basically, the first one, I know that like in some systems, you need a Finnish ID to prove your identity to apply. Is there something like this in Kone's?
No, there's no need for one. Yeah.
Thanks. And another one, I know that if you apply as an artistic group, you need a portfolio. If you haven't been working together before, what sort of portfolio that could be? Is it like a separate portfolio? Or?
Yeah, then in that case it could be separate portfolios. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So it was the same question.
Oh, okay.
Should we take a break now then? Yeah, it's a bit hot in here. Maybe we all need some air, but let's continue in 7 minutes, 4:05. start with our questions. Greta has been busy answering all the questions on YouTube, but let's first start here in Lauttasaari if anyone in here has a question. And please wait for the microphone so everyone online can also hear you.
So, a short question. Are there any career aspects which are intrinsically considered by reviewers for foundation? Because in some application, other grants, they might pay attention to excellence, for sure, but it's important to justify how this grant period will affect career perspective and personal development, etc. etc. How is it part or not?
Hey.
I'm sure I'm not the only person who finds the idea of all of our hopes and dreams being decided by one person kind of terrifying. Is there any system in place to at least point the application in the direction of an evaluator? I know that, for example, if you're applying in music, you can point it towards an evaluator who does music, but there's a huge difference in folk and roots music and techno.
And you know, past experience. So Laura might have answered that question in a way. There's a field where you can write something.
Yeah.
But is there also some kind of like effort made on Kone Foundation side to push it in the direction of an evaluator that's a good fit for the project?
Yes. We have sort of, at least we have, well, I don't know if we have a techno reviewer this year. I'd like to have one, of course, but anyway, we have music evaluators from different fields of music. So and then if the evaluator finds the application difficult to review, then they can ask another evaluator on a comment on that, or they can say that this is something that I don't understand anything about. So, but still, we have rather broad. Fields. I know field categories. If we put sort of much more narrow, if we used a much more narrow approach, like putting folk music and techno and let's say all kinds of different categories, then that would sort of again narrow our perspective. So I think that's why we have chosen to use rather broad field categories and trusting the people who evaluate, of course. I don't know if I answer your question, but this is something that we...
Maybe just to say that in the beginning we kind of... Like if you ask when we receive the application, if we check to whom we think is the best fit for it, we don't do that kind of work. So the process goes that we get the applications, and then let's say if we have 3 evaluators in music, all the applications will kind of randomly be distributed among them. And then, like Kalle said, it's their responsibility to let us know if they see that they are not the right person to evaluate it, or they can ask advice anonymously on the online system.
Hello. I have one question regarding the Metsän puolella project. I'm wondering if the food forest concept is known to the Säätiö And if yes, then how is that kind of apparent in
The food
food forest?
concept.
Yes.
Well, you don't have to worry about what is known to the säätiö. So it's more like if the evaluators metsän puolella are familiar with it. So I think you can trust them that they know it and they will be able to evaluate your application on that topic.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the session. I have two questions. One is, is it correct to interpret the website information to say that organizational applications can only come from Finnish organizations? They can't come from foreign organizations with which people who live outside of Finland would be affiliated?
Well, it's not correct. So
Okay.
they can, but we rarely have foreign organizations applying for funding from us, since our communications are not truly global. So, but anyway, you can. But then, if there's an organization in another country that would like to apply for funding, then at least a part of the project should be in Finland, or the theme of the project should be then about Finland. But it's more practical to have some members working in Finland or based in Finland, or at least having been affiliated with a Finnish institution at some point in time.
Yeah, of course. And my other question is, when I think you, Laura, mentioned list other funding, is this other funding for the same project, or is this other funding in the last X number of years that an academic person would have had?
The mic. So we will. It depends if you apply as an individual or as an organization. If you apply as an organization, we ask funding that you have received for that specific project. You don't need to list every single project grant you have received.
Yeah.
It means that specific project. If you're an individual, we ask all the funding you have received in previous 3 years.
And maybe just to clarify my previous question, so I'm in the United States at an academic institution and affiliated with colleagues at Tampere University, and so in the United States, when as an academic I apply for a grant, it's usually it has to be routed, or it doesn't have to be, it usually is routed through the home institution.
Yeah.
And so my question is, would I click organization or would I click working group? The artist with whom the project would be wouldn't be part of that same organization, so I'm not quite sure. But
well,
maybe
you can
this is an
click
individual
anything.
question.
You can click anything
Click
there.
anything, okay.
Because then, if you are awarded the grant, then you can decide where the money goes to. But we prefer to not route the individual individual grants through institutions.
Yeah.
But we have had to do that in recent years occasionally, because we don't want to put people in trouble because they are receiving money from Kone Foundation. So, and you can choose an individual or a working group.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation this afternoon. My question is basically, if with regards to the pause of a year in between applying again for a subsequent application, should there be a situation where somebody is wanting to apply for a grant for a very ambitious project, but they would need a grant prior to that in order to do a feasibility study, for example, to create a maquette, work with an architect, do a costing, employ a structural engineer. Is it possible to apply for a grant for a 1-year feasibility study in order to do that without waiting for a gap year before making another application?
Well, if you apply for 1 year and then you receive the grant, then you don't have to wait.
Okay.
Because I was telling you that if someone or an organization or a working group has a 4-year grant or 4 years of funding from Kone Foundation, then they can't receive continuity funding immediately after that for the same purpose. We have had to have this rule because we have sort of some organizations have asked us if we could support them like forever, and of course we can without a break. So there we have decided, or the foundation has decided, that we are not a permanent funder for any entity, with a few exceptions though.
Thank you.
Let's take one question from YouTube now. How does the evaluation of the applications ensure the non-discrimination of the applicants in terms of gender, nationality, and other personal information? Is this type of information anonymous?
Well, we ask for a CV, and then there you can sort of include the information you like to include. So anyway, it would be important to include your merits, but our application process is not totally anonymous. So because then because CVs are somehow, or at least some evidence of your previous work is necessary. So then we are, of course, instructing our evaluators to not discriminate against on any basis. So yeah, we can have discussions on whether you should have a totally anonymous application process, but currently we don't have it yet. With no personal information at all.
Maybe I could add to that diversity being one of the values of the foundation, it could also be a positive thing to see that this person comes from another background than maybe the majority of the other applications the evaluator is looking at. So if diversity becomes a topic of discussion with a contact with the foundation staff members, it could even be an asset to some extent.
And this is something that we sort of have been struggling on how to, because you can't really, the evaluators don't see your sort of a background. They don't have if you don't have it in your CV. So that's something that we have to sort of, we have been thinking about how to, and they don't know your gender, or they don't know because we are not even asking for your gender. So yes, that's it. So anyway, the evaluators value diversity.
Thank you. I have a question about applying as a group. As the group leader, is it important for the rest of the group to actually reside or have a Finnish bank account? Because we only one of us
we
might
pay
have.
in, I think, more than 100 countries. So
okay.
Currently.
Do you list all the members' names separately as a group? How important is it my question is, if a team member changes after 6 months?
Yeah.
Then you
happens.
can just okay.
Yeah.
No, and then the second question to that is, if you get a grant, would you be able to receive any expenses in retro for that? So let's say we're planning to do something for a year, but we've already spent X amount of dollars traveling or doing some research.
Well, no, we don't fund retroactively.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Hey, Yes, my question is, it seems less important for this application than other organizations I've applied for. Whether you apply as an organization or an individual or a working group. This is something I've been emailing about as well. It seems to me, based on what you said about you can apply, you can put anything,
Yes.
and you work it out later. It's more, the most important difference is that you've got 8 pages instead of 4. Is that reasonably correct? Because I'm still not sure.
No, if you, do you mean that if you apply as an organization, then you have 8 pages?
So my situation is that I have a UK-based organization, which doesn't yet have a legal entity in Finland, and I am wondering whether it's best for me to apply as an individual whilst I set up a new organization here, or whether I just set up an association as quickly as possible.
But is it just for your work?
No, it's for a project. It's for an artist residency connected to a tour. So
yeah,
it's
so then
residency and tour.
Then it's a sort of project application, and it's 8 pages, regardless of whether you have an organization or an association or.
Yes, but if you apply as an individual, I think
it's for this call.
But I think if you apply as an individual, it can only be 4 pages. That's what I've been told.
If you apply as an individual for your own work only, then it's 4 pages. Maybe we don't have this very. Yeah. Because if it's such a project, for example, because since we always we are path dependent like anyone, so we have had applications from individual researchers and individual artists for some decades now, and then there we have the 4-page rule. But then the application world has diversified a lot, and now you can you don't have to worry about that issue so much anymore. But if you are applying for your own work as an individual, then you should have 4 pages, because that's what because we have like 1,000 applications for doctoral thesis, and there we like to have 4-page research plans for everyone in order to be able to evaluate all of them.
So I'm sorry to ask many questions in one, but so in my case, I would apply, it doesn't really matter as an individual or as a new institution, as an association. It wouldn't make any difference. I would still submit 8 pages because it's a project.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thanks. Just a very simple question. What are the other cultural projects? Because you have in the description that it can be possible to apply for art, research, and other cultural.
Well, I would say that if you have a project that is not that you can't connect with academic work, research work, or science or artistic work, then please don't apply from Kone Foundation. We don't award projects like that. We just have like 2 projects a year, and last year they were something about collecting trash in the city. Yeah.
I'd like to ask about the language that you use in the application. If I caught you correctly, so you can have different parts of the application in different languages. But then again, if you are using an evaluator that is, for example, not speaking Finnish, and you have part of the application in Finnish.
We don't have evaluators who don't understand Finnish, because we accept Finnish as a language of the application.
Okay,
so we can't choose from a global pool of evaluators like the Finnish Academy does. And I don't think we are soon going to give up that we accept Finnish and Swedish and English.
So it means that all of them are actually somehow based in Finland or associated with Finland.
Well, yeah, or they can be working abroad, but they must be able to read Finnish.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question regarding if one is part of both a group application and do a what do you call a personal grant application as well, how that works, if that's possible, and how that would work.
So if you submit both a group application and a personal,
yeah,
well, you can do both. Then you just have 2 applications in the system.
Thank you.
The mic doesn't really work to me, so I mean I hear you like you are speaking to yourself. So please be.
Okay.
Please,
so if I may just come back and if I could ask you to please say a little bit more about what you alluded to when you said. We realize that in other countries the organizational applications work differently and maybe individual applications are not as commonplace, at least in the United States, and so therefore to allow people to apply, you opened up the organizational applications. Can you say a little bit more about that? What kind of opening up or what kind of?
We have become more flexible in how we route the money, how we transport the money to the. We don't use the what was it now, the steamboat or something like that anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask that if I apply as an individual for a 4-year grant, but I do realize that along the way, or in my suunnitelma, in my work plan, I do have to rely on others people's work, and let's say use ostopalvelu or something. Does it go under like extra or other expenses?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, let's take one from YouTube. Would Kone Foundation consider a 2-stage evaluation with abstracts selected in round 1? Selected ones then submit the extended applications for the final round. This way feedback and learning might be possible.
Yeah, we have done that in smaller funding calls, but with the funding call like this one, we don't have that possibility.
Hi, Elina Saniolikainen. I have a very specific budget question. So it was mentioned about the taxation that you don't pay tax on the grant, but you should pay pension. So is that something that you should enter as a specific post in the budget?
No.
Or is it included, it's counted so that for 2,700 for a doctoral student, you should take, from that money you should pay the pension?
Yeah, that's the idea of the grant. So you don't add it to the budget, because and you don't even know it before. It's always individual. It's the MELA, maatalousyrittäjien eläke. Mikä se olisi ruotsiksi?
Foundation. But MELA is correct. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
one minor question. Can moving from one country to another be considered for application? For example, couple of years here in Finland, then moving to other research group, but keeping ties and continue the project somehow, or overall, and how does it affect also this payments to MELA? Should I always then pay to MELA all the time, or if I work for half a year maybe, or 1 year abroad, should I?
Yeah, well, you can always apply for a, let's say, a research period in another country. But if you have if you plan to move permanently away, then you might not say this in the application. But of course, if you are staying for 1 year in another country, the MELA is different. So the pension system is different, and there you should ask the MELA institution, because then you don't pay the MELA pension payment. In an EU, in an European Union country, you pay maybe to the local pension institution, or you are not required to pay to them, or you can have a private pension insurance.
Any more questions here in Lauttasaari?
Yes, so the forest, the open call for the forest, I enjoyed your joke, by the way, as a Brit. But the open call, I have an idea for the forest thing, which is totally not connected to why I'm here. And therefore I'm wondering, is there a limit on, for example, I know that the outcome for this one is in December. Can I start an application potentially for the forest project before the December outcome?
Can you start?
Could I start a new application for the Into the Forests
you
project?
Can, because we have a continuous funding call.
Yeah.
So we are not telling you, we are not even telling you when the decisions will be made. We just tell you to wait for 3 to 5 months before you get the decision. But anyway, you can apply at any time.
And there's another question. Can I? Yeah. The project that I am applying for is probably the vision is mostly to be active, maybe half of the project in Finland and half of the project across the rest of the Nordics. I just wanted to check that sounds reasonable. That's something that Kone can fund, where a project is half here and half spread out.
Yeah. If you have half of it here, then it's
thank you.
Legitimate.
Thank you. I'm just wondering whether you see yourself, the Säätiö itself, whether you see yourself in these projects as a partner or purely as a funder.
Yeah,
or
that's
does
a
it make
very good point.
a difference?
So we have, and this is very much in discussion with our colleagues in Europe and in the US, especially because there you have all kinds of partnerships between funders and NGOs they fund. So, Kone Foundation is a funder, really. It's not a partner, but in addition to being a funder, it then provides the grantees with grants plus services, capacity building. So we have some, it's not very extensive, but there are some things that we provide you with. So like we have there's a space you can use in southern Helsinki for your meetings, small, not big conferences, but for project meetings and then we have other spaces in the center of Helsinki that you can where you can even work for some days, and then we have some trainings and things like that. What else? Mentorship, yes, mentoring. We have organized peer mentoring, and we are always open to new ideas about Grants Plus.
A bit of a follow-up to this question, as you said that your mission is to create a better world, and we know that that requires systemic changes as we are facing complex problems, etc. So I'm just wondering how much this kind of systemic thinking kind of comes up in certain applications, or whether that's something that, you know, if you allude to in your application, like how this contributes towards that mission. How is that seen?
Well, that's very common in social sciences, in environmental research, and they. But what is also, but we have chosen to fund artistic freedom and academic freedom, so we don't require from you to have a sort of mission where you plan to change the world rapidly with your project, but you can have a project like that.
You don't need to say either that you have a solution to the very complex problems of this world, but of course referring to some systemic change maybe hints to the fact that you have some general idea of the world, of the broken world we are living in, so might be a good thing. So would be maybe something that I would mention, but I would not go saying that I have a solution to you, because it's not supposed to be that applicative either.
But then you should also, if your work is in environment and the environmental crisis, you should remember the Nestle Foundation, for example, and now there's a new funder called the Relex Foundation in Finland. So, they are more sort of interested in promoting rapid changes, or sort of supporting work that has a more rapid effect on society.
More questions? Seems like all the questions on YouTube have been answered as well, so I think we can end our session here. Thank you everyone for coming, and please stay around if you have some more questions. We'll be here until 5 p.m. for you. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.